second session of the 2021 Community Relations Commission Lunch and Learn Series. My name is Todd Diefendorf, and I'm Deputy Director of the City of Columbus Department of Neighborhoods. This year, our theme is Access to Racial Justice in Columbus. I thank the Commission for choosing such an important and timely topic this year. Last month, we kicked off the 2021 series with an engaging conversation focused on racism as a public health emergency. Future sessions this year will provide opportunities to learn about the new Civilian Review Board, as well as resources available to help should you experience discrimination. Today, we're focusing on community organizing. And preparing for the conversation today, I thought of something former President Obama said in his farewell speech to the nation. Referencing his days as a community organizer, he urged Americans to stay engaged and advocate for change. He told the audience, if something needs fixing, then lace up your shoes and do some organizing. In the Department of Neighborhoods, we recognize the importance of former President Obama's statement. We know that engaged residents are a key ingredient to having strong and vibrant neighborhoods. I hope everyone listening today will gain new insights to help you become more involved and make more positive change in your community. I'm grateful to Community Relations Commission Vice Chair Imran Malik for moderating our discussion today. Appreciate Carl Smallwood, Reverend Denny Mueller, and Cameron Evans for volunteering their time to serve on our panel. I also want to thank Community Relations Commission member and chair of our Issue and Education Committee, Alison Poirier, for her leadership. It's without her time and attention, we wouldn't be able to have the tremendous series this year and have the wonderful series in years past. In addition, I want to recognize the Ohio Civil Rights Commission, Franklin County Municipal Court, and the Greater Columbus Community Trust for serving as part of our planning committee this year. It's now my pleasure to turn the microphone over to our moderator for today, Imran Malik.
Thank you all, and thank you for joining us today for our second session of 2021, which is again going to be on the topic of social organizing and community organization. And we have experts and panels who will be engaging in conversation and dialogue and giving us their insights and their a lot of opportunities that they have come across and created for the community and the citizens of Central Ohio. My fellow Americans, there is a lot that's happening all around us every day, from the economical challenges to the pandemic, the consistent repetition of systematic and racial injustices that many of us feel direct or indirect impacts in our lives, or whether it's the issues of political divides and disparities that continuously pushes us down. In these mixers, we all want to do something about these challenges, and we all want to better the lives of our fellow Americans and build better pathways for our next generation. And we are glad that we are living in the strongest democracy of the world, where the common citizens have all the opportunities at their disposal to gather and build momentum for the intended and desired changes. This is the beauty of our democracy, and yes, there are days when this is a consistent uphill battle with no ends. But we all know that if we remain determined and true to our goals, it is possible that the people power that have demoed miracles in our nation's bicentennial history. To talk about, again, the challenges and opportunities of community organizing, we have a panel who's joining us here today of community leaders and experts with us today. And we will take a quick moment to do the introductions of our guests and then jump right into our conversation, because as this topic is pretty elaborate and our time is limited here today together, and we definitely want this opportunity to be a starter of having a conversation and looking into the opportunities that we all can work together in the near future and continue to build the synergies and partnerships that makes Columbus and Franklin County and its vicinity a safer and a stronger place for all of us to dwell and call it home. With that, we will take a few moments to do the self-introduction of our guests. And in no specific order, I will request Reverend Denny Mueller to go ahead with her introduction. So.
Hello, everyone, and I'm really happy to be here. I'm Reverend Denny Mueller, legislative liaison to state and federal government for the Episcopal Diocese of Southern Ohio. as well as a board member of HungerNet Ohio, and specialize in social justice action and advocacy for poverty and racial injustice, and trying to correct some of the social ills that we currently have, as well as being on the readiness committee for the Greater Columbus Community Trust, where we do try to be proactive for solving some racial issues.
Thank you, Denny Ray. Paul, do you want to go next, please?
Thank you, Commissioner Malik. My name is Carl Smallwood. I'm a co-director of the Divided Community Project at the Moritz College of Law at Ohio State. And what the Divided Community Project does is to help community leaders address conflict in their communities and to plan for events that might cause conflict in their communities. We work with community leaders and with others in the community around the country on those subjects. We do so since we're at an academic, since we're at a school, we try to bring knowledge together and then publish it in a way that it's accessible to communities around the country. And we also have a group of mediators and conciliators who can intervene, who can help communities that find themselves in difficulty on short notice. So we do that as well. And I'm also the chair of the Greater Columbus Community Trust, which is a group of stakeholders in Columbus, nonprofit leaders, faith leaders, advocates, law enforcement, business, and others who've come together to try to build trust and address some of the issues that concern us, particularly the social issues in Columbus, Ohio, related to race and equity.
Thank you, Paul. That's definitely quite a bit of expertise, and we're looking forward to learning more about that in our conversation today. Thank you. Cameron, do you want to go next, please?
Yes, thank you. My name is Cameron Evans, and I'm actually a junior at Reynoldsburg High School, and I also attend Eastland Career Center. I'm a 2-year member of a youth organization called the Franklin County Youth Council. And what we do is we use our voice to amplify youth voices and enhance our leadership skills. We're a youth organization built of various high schoolers with all districts all over Franklin County, all races, all genders, all ages, and we just do different events surrounding mental health and racial equality. We actually have a big event tomorrow for middle schoolers and high schoolers that we're getting ready for. So stay tuned later for that. I'll probably talk more about that later.
Thank you, Cameron. Thank you, Denny Ray Mueller, and thank you, Carl Smallwood, for joining us for this conversation. And this is our second session of Lunch and Learn series of Community Relations Commission. And we will go straight into our, more discussion format now. And definitely the idea is we will have a conversation, and our listeners and our tuners, they have the opportunity to send their questions in the chat, and we will be addressing those hopefully towards the end of our conversation as well. We definitely want to leave time for that conversation as well. So with that, I would like to pose the first question to our panelists here. As a community organizers, our job is to identify, understand concerns, give direction, and guide peaceful resolution. Can you please all share a little bit the thought process on that and your personal experiences and your exposure?
So for the Youth Council, we do so many events. So as COVID-19 and as everything surrounding race started coming in around May, we did a youth rally that we held. It was a peaceful youth rally, and what we did was we had different suggestions that we had. We presented them to the police officers and different chiefs. It was all suggestions that different youth organizations came up with. So all the youth were saying what they feel, speaking their mind, amplifying their voice, so they could be a leader. And what our suggestions actually did, some of them actually were implemented in police trainings. So it was great to see that youth voices were being heard, especially as younger youth, younger than us, were able to see and look up to us and say, "Oh wow, they're doing that, so maybe I should amplify my voice." So it was really a motivation piece as well.
Excellent. Thanks for sharing that, Cameron. So what are the collaborating and partnership, opportunities in this arena? I mean, how do you reach out to the youth and how do you build those partnerships and onboard volunteers? Are there any specific, processes that you go by?
With our youth organization, we actually have a website. It's really simple. It's fcycoh.org. And with that website, any high schooler, if you're coming into high school, 9th through 12th grade, even if you're younger, you can still put in an application. And what we do is we look at the application. We really want all youth to join our organization, just so we want to build leaders. We want to not shut anyone down. We want everyone to have their voice be heard, especially with the different events that we do. Everyone's voice will be able to get heard. So you are able to join from our website. It doesn't matter your ethnicity, age, as long as you're able to collaborate, and we'll go from there.
Excellent. And just a follow-up to that, like, are these events that you are hosting and organizing, they're mostly local in Columbus vicinity, or do you do all over the state of Ohio?
So the events we do is open to anyone over the state of Ohio, but our panelists are usually from all of the youth organizations in Franklin County. So all of the events that we do is all run by our youth, and we also focus a lot on mental health. That's kind of our big thing. So every event we make sure that we propose different mental health questions. We also do a self-care check-in questions, basically to see how everyone is feeling. And we also do an icebreaker question. So, for example, one of our icebreaker questions would be, based on how you're feeling, what season would you be? And everyone would tell what season they feel like. So that's kind of what we focus on.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing those in-depth details and experiences with us here today, Cameron. Hold that thought for a second, and we'll come back to it about the how the mental health of the youth is being impacted with all that's happening. So we're going to talk about that here shortly. But let's hear from Carl and Denny Ray, Reverend Denny Ray, that what are their thoughts on this important topic?
Thank you, and boy, I'm sorry, Denny Ray. Do you want to go first?
Go ahead.
Okay,
You need to talk about us before we can get in depth.
and I guess we ought to start by just saying, hey, thank you, Cameron. For all the work you're doing, and for being as poised and as wonderful a leader as you already are and will be for this community. You're doing great work. And on what we are doing with Greater Columbus Community Trust, just a little bit of background, then Denny Ray may dig a little deeper into what we're doing. About 5 years ago, we gathered together a group of lawyers and others in Columbus, as faith leaders, nonprofit leaders, community members, to find a way to connect parts of our community that are not connected and should be talking to each other, working on these problems that we've got as a community. And the first thing that we discovered as an important concept was trust. We don't know each other, we don't trust each other, and as a result, it's hard to make policy when you can't trust each other. And you know that if you watch the news or you listen to the radio or read a newspaper. So trust was critical, and we came together in the hope that we would be able to convene groups of stakeholders in Columbus, people with an interest in this community, to build trust, to identify the issues that divided us and caused us not to trust each other, to develop processes so that we could work on those, and so that if something happened in our community, and lots of things, unfortunately, have happened in our community that breach trust. that relate to police-community interactions, that relate to violence in our community, that relate to differences on immigration or religion or other grounds, LGBTQ status, or whatever divides our community in some way. We need to build trust and come together and work on these things collectively. And so we've tried to do that to be helpful when we can and where we can. And we found some opportunities to do that. So we've done that for the last 5 years, a little bit more publicly the last 6 months or so, and hope to continue to connect some of the people in Columbus who would like to participate in that process.
Thank you, Carl. This is good to know, and especially the efforts that you have spearheaded along with the Greater Columbus Community Trust and the Divided Community Trust. And seems like there's a lot of opportunity here, that work being done in the youth discipline and spectrum that Cameron mentioned. So I feel like there's a lot of light at the end of this tunnel. So let's keep moving forward.
Sure looks like it.
Some of what we've done is identify those people within the greater Central Ohio communities that don't know other people exist or feel like they're left out there with people who don't care. And we've done several sessions with community leaders in like near Town East, and we had some from Reynoldsburg, where we got them together and did about a 3 or 4 hour session to identify the things that they're really concerned with and introduce them to other people who actually share the same concerns and may not know, viewing Franklin County and the city of Columbus as this huge thing that nobody knows how to maneuver within and around, so that they can begin to feel that they have someone who is listening to them. We are trying to put things together so that we can build the trust between each one of those. And then we're kind of a central point that we then can make a statement. And we were quiet for a little while, but we haven't been recently. We have several departments or groups. Readiness, which is one that says, okay, if we potentially have an incident, then how do we react? And we gathered police and Urban League and the United Way and anybody who could conceivably help address a crisis. And we've done that a few times. And what's really been interesting is that some of the organizations we worked with thought they had it all figured out and realized that there were huge gaps. And in some cases, they're working on correcting those gaps. But they also heard from people within their community that they didn't necessarily ever consider might be critical to the success of that. Another group we have is education. When we find out these disparities, we want to be able to provide guidance to the community on how to relate, what social services are there, who they need to contact. And that goes a long way. We're not only race related, but any kind of an issue that might come up in the greater Columbus, which sort of is like Central Ohio area, to help with the communities to be able to communicate, to build trust between them and get them to work together.
Excellent. Thank you, Reverend, and that's very insightful and helpful to know. Again, it seems like there's a lot of positive work that's happening all over, not only in our localized communities, but also nationwide. But often at times, it seems like that work is either going unaddressed or unrecognized, and we just probably need to find ways to build synergies around. So to that point, a kind of a follow-up and a mixture of similar thought processes. How do you feel our social systems, which are the pattern series of interrelationships existing between individuals, organizations, institutions, groups, are forming a coherent whole? and how does that impact the ability for us to induce a positive change or make that happen? Any thought processes or any tips for the local advocacy groups and local community leaders and liaisons how to undertake that initiative?
We need to talk to each other. And we're hoping, one of the things that we hope with the greater community, Columbus Community Trust, is that we're a neutral group. And I represent all areas of the world, that we can get those groups together. And are beginning to work with some other community organizations that are working on the same issues of police violence or social poverty or whatever was critical to their neighborhood that people haven't recognized before. And now we're working with them, and then we can tie them into other organizations that share a common goal. It's in its infancy, but I think we're making some inroads. We're at least becoming known and connecting organizations that wouldn't normally even recognize that they're a valuable organization.
Great. Thank you. Carl or Cameron, do you want to add any follow-up thought processes to that?
Yeah, so to kind of play off of that, along with talking to people, we have to build relationships. I feel like building relationships, whether that's directly or indirectly, building relationships not only helps you to be a better leader, but it helps you to get your voice out there, share your opinion. And that's kind of what we do as a youth council, is we want to always build relationships with different organizations, collaborating with different people. It really helps our image. And the more we build relationships, the more positive change we can make in our community. So I feel like building relationships is a big piece of that.
Excellent.
Yeah, and Imran, I guess I would add, I mean, I think there are a couple of issues. I mean, one is we're siloed, two, we're segregated, and three, we're suspicious. By siloed, I mean that, we each have our own little areas and we try to operate within them, and we don't really know what's happening in the silo next to us. And that is both inefficient, and it can be problematic because you can bump into each other and clash even when you don't intend to. We're segregated, and I don't just mean racially, although that's very much true. Martin Luther King Jr. 50 some years ago said, 10 o'clock on Sunday morning is the most segregated hour in America.
Yeah.
And it's now 2021, and it's probably still true. And he wasn't just talking about religion, he was talking about race, but he's talking about more.
Mm-hmm.
And so in some respects, if we're going to get ourselves to a place where we're not segregated, where we are no longer suspicious of the people we don't know and have no familiarity with, we've got to get out of our silos. And it's important, I guess, where Cameron is with youth groups. And I'm excited to hear that he's working with groups in sort of Franklin County, which is a whole bunch of school systems, which again, by zip code may be more segregated, but when you bring them together, you have a chance to build some of these bridges. And obviously with adults, and this intergenerational piece is really critical as well. And that's one that, we're beginning to turn a little bit more attention to. The idea that, as you said, Imran, this is a tunnel. I'm probably closer to one end of the tunnel than Cameron is. He's probably where the light is, and that's where we're trying to go. But as I said, the hope is we can bring those together so that the silos aren't just this way, but we actually make some progress horizontally.
Excellent. And I completely agree with all three of your thought processes and your suggestions as well. Partnership is very important and building trust in that partnership definitely, takes our relationship to a deeper level and the next level. And we are humans. We always, like to see things being delivered. We don't start believing it until we start seeing the service delivery process. So I think partnerships and trust, I completely agree. Those are the two important things that we all need to focus on. And we are living in a very globalized world where it's just not the local and regional and national relationships and partnerships that we have to look into the survivability of human race, but also the global partnerships with other nations across the world. And through technology, of course, things are getting bigger and smaller. So our hearts also have to become bigger and more connected as well. So I completely agree to that. Before we kind of segue into the next question that I have here for you folks, I would like to remind our viewers and our watchers and also our audience that if you have any questions, please feel free to put it out in the chat, and we will come to those questions here shortly once we are done with some additional discussions here to kind of set up the platform for addressing those questions. So with that,
Imran, before you move on, Imran, if I could just say, because we've talked about partnerships, and I think that's really important, and we're trying to build those. But until you get those, allyship matters as well. And I think it's a slightly different concept. But being there for the other, I mean, not necessarily stepping in, but being there and being supportive is critically important. And leaders can do that with communities, and trust can be built as a result. And I guess in that regard, if you're younger, like Cameron is, you tend to have association. There are ways of trying to bring people together that way. If you're older than Cameron is, for a lot of people watching this program, you've got influence.
Yeah.
And your influence can be brought into allyship to make progress on issues you care about. And we need to do more of that as a community. We need to speak up and we need to speak out, even when it isn't our community that is being attacked, or it is our community that has suffered a loss. And we see that. But I think we need to do even more of that and be allies. Then we'll become partners.
Well, and by being an ally, and in your group where you have trust, where people know you, where they believe you, then it really can be like a spider web that moves out, because someone in another group or silo knows someone that's in yours, and they pass that on, and it's a way of propagating this concern and the potential to become allies or partnerships by association, by relationships. It's just a web that just keeps moving out.
Agreed. Yep. And thank you for those follow-up, suggestions and comments as well, Carl and Denny Ray. I completely agree, and I think we are all on the same page here. So that's very, very important. And I'm hoping that this becomes contagious. That we agree to disagree, but we are able to work together for the better survivability of not only our own self, but our communities, our neighborhoods, and our cities and our states as well. So as I mentioned at the beginning of this session, that today is a National Prayer Day, and hopefully our prayers will get answered. So. Excellent. All right, so we will, move on to another question that we have been wanting to ask you experts, because you are the community's doers and leaders, and you are down in the trenches, building these partnerships, allianceships, as well as relationships with not only individuals at the grassroots level, but also with the organizations, both on the elected official side, on the public safety side, as well as faith and the cultural partnership side as well. So I would like to hear, for the work that we have been doing in all our different swim lanes, what are the recognized evidence-based solutions for assisting communities to make the change? And I know, Reverend Denny Ray, you kind of mentioned that you have done some work for the GCCT and the Divided Community Initiative with the city of Columbus as well. So if you can speak on those mock scenarios that have been already worked, and what were the outcomes and results and feedback on that?
Through the Divided Community Project, there's been developed a role playing of a crisis in a city, and you get every unit of the city involved, as well as neighboring police, anyone who might be affected in a crisis. And we create situations that are fluid. It starts out with the bad boys are coming in to picket or something like that. But it's fluid because each of the areas, there's a group of nonprofits who are there and officials and police and things. As each condition changes, it's fluid and the groups need to react as if it were a real situation. What would you do? And what has happened is that we have identified, in fact, as Carl says, we operate in a silo. There's a decided lack of communication between individuals that should be talking to each other. There wasn't, in one case we did it, they didn't even have a telephone tree. So they didn't even know who to call.
Right.
And what came out of it after some analysis and the analysis by the individual people is that they needed to do better communicating. And actually, to some extent, the new group of the Department of Cities, or whatever it's, anyway, that was formed, that Carla heads up, is an attempt at that, because they've created individual districts that now have police representatives and communicate, and the Department of Neighborhoods oversee all kinds of activities to help them become more a part of the greater Columbus area.
So were there any specific feedbacks that you received when you did these scenarios running with different partnerships? Like, were there still, I'm sure there's always sky's the limit when it comes to room for improvement and excellence. What were some of the thought processes and suggestions that were received as feedback?
By nature of what we were dealing with, it wasn't published because it just wasn't published. But the individual participants saw the worth of it and have made changes in their departments and their functions, and the Department of Neighborhoods is maybe an idea of what happened because not everybody in Columbus was talking to each other.
Excellent.
Yeah,
Carl?
and Imran, if I could elaborate, actually, Denny Ray is right. We did actually run that we call it a simulation with the city of Columbus, and while we don't talk about specifically what happened in the simulation, the mayor has actually done a short video concerning his experience running this process with his cabinet. And that's available on our website. I guess I didn't send that to Pedro, so he probably can't post it yet. I'll need to send it later. But if you'll give me just a second, in terms of, you asked about evidence-based solutions to assist communities. If Pedro can permit me to share a screen for just a second, I can show you where you can find some of that kind of information on our website. And where are you? There we go. Yep. Well, yes. Okay. There it is. If you go to the Divided Community Project website at Ohio State, and you can get there by going to go.osu.edu/DCP for Divided Community Project Toolkit, it'll bring you essentially to this page. or if you just put divided community project into Google, it'll
Google, yeah, that's the easiest
take you
way.
pretty close to this page. But we've put together some of the guides and information we've created. And on that page, you can identify yourself. Cameron's going to look at this and say, well, okay, where's the youth page? And you'd be right. That's one of the first things that's going to have to change now. But as I said, we've done a lot of this work for leaders, so university leaders, community leaders, community members, educators, that sort of thing. And if you're a community leader and you click on that page, it will take you to some of the information and guidance that we've created. And these guides are written as a result of work we've done studying Sanford, Florida, and Ferguson, Missouri, and Baltimore, Maryland, and other places. This is before Minneapolis, Minnesota, and George Floyd's death. These were published early in 2020. But those are the kinds of communities we're studying division in, bringing the lessons forward, putting them in guides, and writing them in a way that they're accessible and understandable to people. I mean, I'm a lawyer. These weren't written for lawyers.
Right.
These were written for community members and community leaders, and they're checklists and guides. And that kind of information, I think, may be helpful to people who are interested in looking at a little bit deeper dive into the kind of tools that are available to people in communities and the different communities that have formed responses. Greater Columbus Community Trust is what is here in study 4. That's one model of how a community has organized groups of stakeholders in a way to try to affect change. I mean, ultimately, that's what a community is about, to be the voice, to be responsive to the needs of the community. But there are different models. Some grow out of police community dialogues or conflict in that circumstance. Some grow out of events that occur. Bloomington, Indiana is featured in some of our work because of an incident they had initially at a farmer's market that gave rise to a conflict in the community. And so, there's information that's available. And as I said, as soon as I get a chance, we're going to have to connect with Cameron and put a youth slide.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome.
And then to touch on that, community profile and coalition buildings is evidence-based. That's always working to bring community change, just to bring people together to address issues that are present as far as, like I said earlier, relationships. And as Mr. Smallwood kind of put on being a community leader, he has a whole list on his website for being a community leader, which is great. And we want to inspire everyone to make a change in their community. So that's really what I have to say about that.
Excellent. Thank you, Cameron. Thank you, Carl, for sharing all those details. And I'm sure some of the data has been sent to Pedro. And I don't know if this is the right time for Pedro to share that, or would that be more towards the end of our discussion today? But either way, we will get that list of information and details over to our viewers who are tuned in, and also to all other community partners as well, hopefully very soon. So with that, I will also like to follow up with another question. And again, we will also take questions from chat as well eventually. What do you recommend people to do now to lay the groundwork for change? I know there's a lot of great work happening in a lot of different places, in a lot of different demographics, and among a lot of different ethnicities as well. But at the end, it seems like we all have to find ways to build those conduits into each other's work and create the synergies, because we all understand that not everyone and each one of us have all the expertise under the sun to do everything under the sun by yourself. So we have to find ways to collaborate, create partnerships, and work together. And if you can, each one of you can speak a little bit about the groundwork for change, how to move forward in a more peaceful and a more tranquilized way, that will be greatly appreciated.
I think one of the most important things is that a lot of people don't participate because they think it's not going to make a difference. So although they see something that they think should be changed and they may even feel very passionate about it, but they either don't think it's going to make any difference or they don't know where to start.
Mhm.
So anybody who really would like to help facilitate a change needs to make it vocal. So people, they may find that, you know, half of the area that they live in feels the same way, but nobody's wanted to step out and be the first one. So if you feel passionate about it and you think something needs change, find a group, be vocal, say, you know, I would like to change this, or I'm not happy with whatever it is. So that instead of sitting there and stewing because it's not what you want, get involved. Get out there.
And to touch on that, um, like you said, you have to get out there, use your voice. That's one of the reasons I initially joined the youth council, so I could make a change in my community, build relationships. I think another thing is just when you want to build relationships, go out there and put your voice out there. Um, being on this webinar right now is putting yourself out there. You want to ask any questions, make sure that your voice is heard. Um, and then also to touch on relationships with the youth council, we always want to make sure that we're collaborating with different organizations, because as youth, if we can create great relationships now, that will help us in the future when we're trying to go to college or when we're trying to find a job. It'll really enhance our leadership skills, because we're working on that now. And then we just learned about a couple months ago, we put together a grant. All the youth got together and we did a grant by ourselves, and got approved for our event tomorrow. So that's another thing that you may while building those relationships. You may learn some more skills. Like I learned how to make a grant, so it's great to get relationships.
Excellent.
Yeah, I mean, I love what they've said, and I think they're absolutely right. We've got to speak out. You've got to give voice to some of these concerns. I also think that actions speak louder than words. And so as each of them has discussed, it isn't just a matter of saying, boy, I don't like X or I don't like Y. And being concerned that by saying that, you know, you may be talking to somebody who has a very different opinion about that, you know, and so I guess our website has got some ideas about, you know, one, we want leaders to speak out, but two, you know, ways to get into difficult conversations. We've got to have some of the difficult conversations now to get to some of the issues that matter. Talking about race can be a difficult conversation. Racial justice, racial equity matters. We've got to have those conversations. We've got to have them not just with our best friends. We've got to have those conversations with others. So I say actions speak louder than words. It means you've actually got to go do something. And, you know, and Cameron sort of organizing something that brings people together and writing a grant for it, that's doing something. That's an action. And I love that. I absolutely love that. And I guess I'd add one thing too. There's a lot of hard work to connect our passions to a process that will affect change in our community. And that's what people want in our community, and that's what each of us in our own places is trying to do. But in addition to that, There was a thought I was gonna share. It's gone now. Well, anyway, it'll come to me as it's this. There's room as well for celebration. It's a lot of this can be hard work. And God willing, we'll get through this pandemic at some point, with vaccines and other things, we'll be able to get together in person safely. And I think, some of the things that bring us together, that bring us out of our silos, are some of the events that celebrate our differences, and are peculiar to some of our neighborhoods. And I hope we get, back to that safely. But as I said, I think that's important too, because when we talk about building trust, when we talk about building relationships, when we talk about, trying to come together to work towards a better future for Columbus, we've got some things to celebrate, and we ought to do that when we can, because it's tough right now. It's tough.
Great.
And we recognize that.
Well, and just getting through the pandemic is something that we should celebrate, because it's been rough for a lot of people. I mean, it's rough for all of us, but those people who don't have the ability to have access via Zoom or WebEx no longer can go to church. There aren't community. I mean, we don't have a single festival this year. Those things have emotional and psychological effects on people. And Carl's right. When we get through this, we need to celebrate, but be conscious of how we do it.
Excellent. And I agree to that point as well. And I want to bring the conversation back with that thought process back to Cameron. Is a lot that is happening, in pandemic itself, and beside pandemic, the other, malices and other issues that our communities are getting exposed to day in, day out, and especially the youth. How is the mental health situation getting addressed from the youth groups? Are there peer pods? Are there peer groups that you have or your organizations have created to help youth kind of navigate through those challenges? I want to hear a little bit about that, and then of course we'll take some questions from the audience after that. So
Yes. So of course, the Youth Council has put together many ways that we could address mental health. One way I'll start off with our Mental Health Mondays. We usually hold this during the month of June, and going into July. So what we do for our Mental Health Mondays is every Monday we would have a different speaker or a different panelist come in, and we would submit youth questions regarding mental health that they may want to ask those panelists. So the youth would ask the panelists a question regarding mental health, and the panelist usually gives us a detailed answer on how we could do better for our mental health, for our own mental health. So that's one way, and then also we have little resource cards with different mental health hotlines that you can reach if you ever need to talk to somebody. We have different resource cards. We also have self-care check-in questions. And those questions are: how are you? What's taking up most of your headspace? Are you eating enough? Are you getting enough sleep? Are you doing something that brings you joy? So we also have little cards that say the self-care check-in questions. And then once again, you can find all those on our website at fcycoh.org. I don't know if I forward that to Pedro, but you can also find all those on our website. So those are kind of the things that we do to help with mental health. And then also everyone in all of our youth in our organization is very open to talking about mental health. So if anybody ever needs help, you could always come to one of the people in our organization.
Give the website again, Cameron.
It's all caps FCYC, and then a lowercase o, lowercase h.org.
thank you, Cameron.
Yep.
All right. So with that, I know we are kind of getting closer to our allocated time here together as well today. But definitely there's some questions in the chat that I will read out. And if our panelists and our experts can provide some thought processes briefly on those questions. And then again, there are a lot of contact information that will be shared after this session with everyone. And feel free to reach out to any of these experts on the panel today, or even to the Community Relation Commission for any further guidance, or if there is a need for having a follow-up session on this conversation or this topic, we'll be more than willing to do that for the community as well. So the first question I have from the chat is, how will COVID change what community organization looks like in 2021 and 2022? So I'm sure with everyone getting vaccinated nationwide, things are kind of getting opened up a little bit. So Carl, Cameron, and Reverend, if you want to add a quick statement to that.
From your lips to God's ears. Okay. Yeah, no, I hope the time will come when we can get back together in person.
Yeah, me as well. I feel like you said, with the vaccines coming out, I just got my second vaccination today. I feel like we'll be able to open things up.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
It's hard to do organizing over Zoom when you don't, because organizing is people to people, like flesh to flesh. So it really has been hard. And I think we've lost some of the people who were previously very active just because you get Zoom overload. You have 3 or 4 Zooms a day, and by the time the day is over, you don't even know what your name is. And if you're not very proficient,
Right.
it's hopefully everybody, besides talking 860 miles an hour with every friend, hopefully people will be really enthused to get back doing something.
Makes sense.
But it is a detriment to organizing.
Thank you. And I think we have time for attending one more quick question. There are another couple more, but we'll try to see how much time we're left with. And then we also have some quick closing remarks to make sure we end on time, respecting everybody's time as well. So the next question I have is, where do private businesses fit in this equation? How can we work with businesses or hold large corporations accountable? So I'm not sure how exactly this kind of ties into the social injustices and community organizing, but if any thoughts from the panelists on this one?
Yeah, I guess I've got some thoughts. I mean, I think a number of the businesses in the wake of or at the same time, the city council was considering naming racism a public health crisis last summer, issued statements about their recognition that there were issues of racial equity in Columbus, Ohio that needed to be addressed, and stating their commitment to become more active in addressing systemic inequality, systemic injustice. So I think the important thing now is for people to get connected. I mean, again, I would say actions speak louder than words. So that, those groups that are organized and that are coming together around issues related to race and justice in Columbus need to make their voices known, and the process for doing that is a space that we tend to occupy, or at least we want to be a part of. We love to help convene that space to permit folks to look at the process, and then give those business leaders who really have a significant influence in Columbus, Ohio, an opportunity to deliver on the words they spoke last summer.
Yeah.
And again, it's not really an advocacy piece. It really is. There are parties who are basically saying we want to be helpful in this space, and the hope is that we can bring people together so that they can affect change to help the community.
And employees can hold their officers, the CEOs and the diversity people, hold their feet to the fire. Be a squeaky wheel if they don't feel that it's just verbal and not actual.
Makes sense. Thank you. So I think we have enough time to quickly address and this last question, and also kind of put your closing remarks. I request each of the panelists to do that so we can have a quick time for closing statement from myself as well. So the question is, what role do panelists see neighbors playing when it comes to community organization and strengthening our neighborhoods? So if each one of you can address that question in a short, brief statement, and also put your closing remarks in less than a minute, that will be greatly appreciated.
Be active in your neighborhood. Talk to your neighbors. Don't just kvetch about things that you would like to see changed. Get active and form coalitions within your neighborhood and then expand it. People need to be responsible for initiating that change.
Yeah, I agree. As Mr. Smallwood said, actions speak louder than words. I would say just create, if you want to create an organization, it doesn't matter if it's by yourself to do an action. If you're really passionate about something, don't just speak about it. Always try to do something to put your words into actions. Make a plan, figure out how you can do that plan, and then go do it. It not only will it help you, but it'll also motivate other people to join what you want to do. So just make sure you're doing that.
Thank you, Cameron.
I think that's great. Meet people where they are and go from there. As I guess, we all start in different places. We all bring different talents. And so I think as people sit there and try to figure out, how do I help or where do I plug in, start where you are. And if you reach out, I'm hopeful that people will say, what would you like to do? Where do you think you can help? And let's then try to move the community forward from there.
Thank you. All right. So I know we're kind of almost at the end of our allocated time. I will quickly conclude everything in a quick statement here. And I want to thank our guests and our panelists who have taken time to be part of our discussion today here. And we look forward to working together and collaborating a lot of more near future events. And then also want to thank the Community Relations Commission for organizing this. And I'm hoping that there'll be need for more dialogue and more opportunities to come. So in closing, I would like to state a few things. As President Kennedy once said, ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. Our democracy is beautiful, folks, because of our diversity, and there is strength in our diversity. We just have to find ways to bring those synergies out and find ways to work together and move forward with trust building and creating alliances and partnerships, as our guests have spoken about. We have a lot of work coined up for us as elected officials, community leaders, community liaisons, and individual community members, and the citizens of this beautiful nation. But we also know that there's a lot of opportunities for all of us to build partnerships, and that is at our disposal, as we have heard from all our esteemed guests and panelists today, that there's a lot of great work, great organizations doing diligent groundwork that is also deliberate, and that's also creating partnerships and creating pathways for collaboration for now and for future. We all need to do our parts, and it is through dialogue, deliberation, and again, by building trust within ourselves, we can continue to be a nation that is a beacon of hope for all. With that, once again, I would like to thank our watchers, our viewers, and our audience, and our panelists, and the CRC Commission for hosting this event today. Thank you for joining us. With that, you all stay safe, and God bless America.